Hello everyone and welcome to episode 60 of the Nurtured by Nature podcast. Today I'm delighted to welcome back Meghan, a herbalist based in Yorkshire in the UK. Meghan previously joined me for an inspiring introduction to herbal medicine in episode 34. We had so much fun that we couldn't resist reconnecting to share with you all a deeper dive into how cultivating your relationship with healing plants can literally be a gateway to a completely different way of approaching life and showing up in the world. Whilst many people may initially be drawn to herbalism due to ill health and an interest in how they can use plants for healing, Meghan is passionate about instilling in her students the deeper levels of fulfilment that this modality can bring. When you truly learn to work with the plants, you also become comfortable tapping into and listening to your own inner voice and wisdom. This becomes a way of life that is rich in a sense of discernment and empowerment that ripples out in unexpected and uniquely individual ways. We actively question what has become accepted and normal in our modern societies and consider how we can step outside this paradigm and choose to live from a place that resonates with a more purposeful life force and ensures you fully enter into the beautiful web of relationship that is naturally woven through everything in our world. We invite you to join us in considering how you become the architect of your own life and can help shape a more loving and compassionate society. Welcome, Meghan. I'm really excited to have you back. People who've been listening for a while might remember our previous episode about a year ago. I think it was episode 34. So if you haven't yet had a chance to listen to that, I would highly recommend it because we had a fantastic chat and a good sort of introduction to the overview of herbalism. But we're back again because we just couldn't resist catching up and sharing more about herbalism and how important and empowering it is for you in life. But yeah, just maybe I did get a little mention from a guest the other day. We were talking about foraging and she said she'd been on another podcast and people were like, what is foraging? So I think maybe we should just start there by just sort of having a little like, what is herbalism in case people have never heard of it before, and then we'll go on from there.
Sure. So I'm so happy to be back chatting with you, Fiona. We had such a nice conversation last time. We kind of ended it with, can we chat again? But yes, so what is herbalism? So herbalism, you'll hear it called herbal medicine as well. Sometimes in the States they call it herbology, or of the Harry Potter persuasion,
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I quite like that, herbology.
Yes, but herbal medicine is the practice of working with whole plant medicine to bring the body back into a state of balance, therefore reestablishing health. So we look at it as not sort of there's something wrong or broken with the body, but we look at, okay, something's gone a bit out of balance. How can we recalibrate? We do that by working with the plants with the principle of opposites. So if there's a lot of excess heat in the body, we'll work with cooling plants. If there's a lot of excess moisture, we'll work with drying plants, for example. And it's a holistic practice. So that means, I'm saying the body, but that's the body, the mind, the spirit, the emotions, all the different, words and aspects you want to use to sum up this thing that we're living in and doing in this lifetime. So it takes into account those aspects as well. And we work with whole plant remedies. So we use them in various forms, whether it's a tea or a tincture, what have you. But what we're not doing is extracting one compound. What we're not synthesizing or isolating one little aspect or another. We've got the whole thing in context. So I usually explain it to my students as sort of, you wouldn't take the hand of an artist, just the hand, don't get too morbid with it, but just the hand and go, right hand, go create, go paint the Sistine Chapel, It took the whole artist with the inspiration and the skill and the perspective and everything in context to create that. So it's the same with herbal medicine. The compounds of the plant are kept within the context of the whole plant.
Yeah, and I think that's quite an important differentiation, isn't it? Because people who, might know a little bit might know that a lot of our conventional pharmaceuticals that we would be prescribed often have had their origins in components of plants where they've isolated specific parts of a plant so that they can, reproduce it, but they haven't got that holistic whole collection that the plant has that maybe they've missed. They've just gone, oh, that isolated bit actually does this. And so that's the sort of, just bringing in the whole wisdom of the plant rather than just sort of cherry picking a little bit of it, isn't it?
Exactly. And you can trademark a particular isolation, synthesized version. You can't trademark a hetero.
Yeah. Thank goodness.
Yes, thank goodness. Oh.
But I mean, a lot of people come to herbal medicine. Well, a lot of people come to sort of these broad arcing alternative medicines because they've got a health challenge. And I know that was actually what sparked your own interest in it, wasn't it? You had your own journey of health challenges. And I remember from our first episode, you said that you went on your first herbalism course in England, and you said it was like a light bulb moment of just like suddenly like the world around you, having not had a hugely an upbringing hugely involved with nature, you were like the whole world just came into like 3D for you, didn't it? And you suddenly were like, wow, there's this whole world out there that I can explore. Yeah,
it was almost like in the Matrix. There we go. That's how old I am. In the Matrix, they've got the blue pill and the red pill, and I never remember which is which. But it's almost like I took the green pill, and it was whoosh. Then you can just your whole landscape just lights up, and you walk around going, wait a minute. There's free medicine. There's free medicine. There's free medicine. Here's how I work with it. Wow, it was just it really lit things up for me.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of where we wanted to sort of start this conversation, isn't it? Is that it's like you might come to herbal medicine because you've got a specific health concern or condition that you're hoping for help with, because usually inevitably it's because you tried everything else and it's not helped. Unfortunately, that's the way that people tend to find these things. But actually, that's just the tip of the iceberg, isn't it? This is just this beautiful world and relationship that you can enter into that just can have so many positive impacts on your life.
And I find that it really not only does it open up the plant world to people, not only does it open up the interconnection for people, and that sort of remembering that it's not nature and us, we are also nature. But it opens up this chain of inquiry where suddenly if we can do things this way, if they're effective this way, if we can take a different perspective and a different approach, we start to wonder, where else can I take a different approach? We start to question the other things that are just givens, the way things are done, the norms. So, I like to think of it as nature versus norms. Yeah. What's the norm? What's the natural way of doing it? Yeah. What's the natural approach?
Yeah, I think it's really... I had a guest a while ago who actually works for a conservation charity in America, the National Wildlife Federation, and they've got a for-profit which is called Garden for Wildlife. And he had a background in like aerospace and business and everything, and he called it orthodoxies, like basically things that you take for granted, like we've always done it this way, so we'll always do it this way. And he was like, how it's really important to just sort of take that step back and go, well, why do we do that? Why have we always done that? And is that the best we can do? And he said, it's just that inquiring mind. Sometimes you might come back and go, well, actually, what we're doing is great, fantastic, carry on. And he goes, other times you might come back and go, well, actually, we could do something a little bit different that's actually works better or could work better, and we can explore that and try that.
Yes, so when we think about the way things are done and the way things have always been done, quote unquote, how far back are we going on that timeline? I usually talk about herbal medicine being the original medicine.
Yeah.
What about the original way things were done? Yes, over time and human experience, we learn more, we change things, we tweak how we want to do them. But how many generations back are we going when we think about the way things are done? Are we going back 0 generations because actually we're just chucking everything?
Yeah.
I don't like any of that. Totally new. Here we go.
Yeah.
Are we going back 1 generation without question? 2 generations? Not that we've got to, like you said, just because you question it doesn't mean you've got to chuck it out. But it's worth examining it. And I've been thinking a lot lately about, this expression, the old ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we've got a sort of romantic notion about, the old ways. And usually there's a bit of kind of like witchy poo that's involved with it, sort of, and tinkly music and whatever kind of thing. But how old are those old ways, whichever old ways you're looking at? And I think actually we used to say things like, oh, eat what your grandmother ate. I think maybe we need to go a couple more generations back. And by a couple more, I mean probably at least pre-Victorian in the UK. Yeah. If anything comes post-Victorian era, you gotta go, Yeah. What were Victoria and Albert up to then? Do I want to be up to that as well? But looking back to, like you said, and like this other guest said, these orthodoxies, what is it that's just taken for granted? Why is that part of our common way of being, that we just sort of go about it? Is it nourishing? Is it holding us? Is it keeping us connected as a community? Or is it giving us more avenues for isolation, for being separate?
I think that's really true, isn't it? And I think we mentioned a little bit in our first conversation about how we just, we've kind of reached a tipping point in our modern lives where actually, our health is suffering. Like, we're just we're screaming out in every way of we can't cope with the world that's, we played our part in creating it, but has been created around us, that we now find ourselves in, which is this place of, especially I think over the last year since we last spoke, the isolationism, the entrenched division in societies has just kind of exploded even more, which seems impossible because it was already pretty bad. But it does feel like, we are just crying out for change. And I think a lot of people don't know what that looks like or where to look for it, because like you said, they don't have this sort of understanding of history, or they feel they don't have the time to look at history, and they're just very much in the life that we've got now. And it is kind of, I was talking to my partner the other day about how much has changed in our lifetimes, and we're 42, and we're like, my goodness, our childhood, if you tried to explain to some of my friends have got children, if I tried to explain to them our life is pre-teen, it's that's a different world. No cell phones, I think we had 4 channels on the TV, and we didn't have internet, and the shops were shut on Sunday. And it is just this, I think herbalism is a way to start reconnecting, isn't it? I think that's really what it is. It's reconnecting with something that's greater than just ourselves, and that sort of ripples out to obviously not just nature, but creating community, and the strength in that is really what we're crying out for in the world at the moment. I think, well, certainly I feel that anyway.
And I think when you, in that reconnection process, you reconnect to what is greater than yourself, in a way through reconnecting to yourself as well. There's a lot of in the way I teach herbalism, a lot of tuning into your intuition. A lot of people can't hear it at all anymore.
Yeah.
So first we turn the volume on, we take it off mute, we turn the volume on, then we turn it up, and then we start to listen. And that, making that voice within you louder, means that it can start to drown out the noise that's around you. And the more you're listening to that inner voice, because your inner voice, I mean, yes, it's our own self, but that is picking up on the energy, the wavelengths. It's resonating with, we often use this phrase, oh, does it resonate with me or not? But like physically think of sound waves, yeah? Is it resonating what's happening in nature, what the rest of nature is saying, and we're tuning in almost like on a radio, tuning into that channel? We can hear it. We start to act on it. We ask questions that help us tune into it further. And then the more you act on it, the more you realize, like you said, the world we're living in, in a nutshell. But having lived herbalism for many years and taught it for many years, having observed the world and how it's been going the last few years, my sort of, not New Year's resolution, but I guess manifestation promise to myself for this year was, do you know what? That world of doom and gloom and all that stuff, I don't live in that world.
Yeah.
That's not the world I live in. My world is full of wonderful people who support each other. My world is happy. Like I mean, but it sounds funny, but not. But since 2020, how many of us have all been living in the this kind of constant state of gloom, and then every once in a while you get this spark of happy. Versus,
it's like the ultimate revolution, isn't it? It's like I'm gonna be happy.
I'm gonna be happy. Then you've got when Harry met Sally a moment. I'll have what she's having. But the age we grew up in, I mean, when we were kids, it wasn't this, wow, this really sounds very,
well, we were talking about the old ways.
Yes, I'm stepping into the elder energy here. But, when we were kids, you didn't have to manifest, I'm going to be happy. Yeah. You just were. And sometimes some crummy stuff happened. And some crummy stuff happened. But, it was not the same vibe. So the more you practice tuning into your intuition, choosing what wavelengths you're resonating with, choosing, okay, maybe this is the norm, but this is what nature is calling out for. I'm going to choose that. You step into your own nature, which is connected to the wider bit of nature. And, a couple of years ago, the birds were singing louder than they've ever sung. Yeah. So slowing down, connecting with the seasons, getting a bit more as much as you can with, like schedules and things that, the things we have to do, syncing more with that flow of nature, the seasons, the rhythms, which you have to do when you're embedding herbal medicine into your life, because you've got to pay attention to what's growing. I'm still waiting for the cleavers moment. The cleavers moment.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, I haven't seen any yet this year. Yes. We've got. I noticed in the woods near us, it's a lovely bluebell woods. We've got like the green shoots of all the bluebell leaves just coming through the leaf litter. So it's like, not long, spring is around the corner.
Yes, and we've got all the snowdrops, and I'm like, yeah, snowdrops. But I feel like the beginning of the herbalist new year is when the cleavers come out, and then it's like, yes, fresh herbs, go.
Well, I mean, they're kind of because my horses love cleavers as well, and they've got some other names that are like Sticky Willies.
Sticky Willy, yeah.
from which harks back to our childhood, and I'm sure like hopefully children today still like grab them and stick them to each other.
Yeah.
But it's, I mean, that's a wonderful herb for the spring, isn't it? It's like nature knew what it was doing. When it went, we're coming out of winter here, you might need this.
But I mean, nature is in the, I guess, the non-human aspect of nature, yeah, because like the hedgerows haven't had heavy greenwashed marketing chucked at them for years, and all, you know, all kinds of other things. So it just does what it does, and it knows this is the time for this, and this is not. It doesn't sit there questioning itself, you know. It gauges what's happening in terms of temperature, daylight, these sorts of things. And then it goes, okay, yes, now it's time. Because it's listening, it's connected, it's plugged in, and it's paying attention. As opposed to humans who tend to go, I'm deciding this is the time is now. Or are you listening to yourself, tapping into the rest of nature to be able to hear this is time, and then practice acting on that so you see, yes, it was time, and that's worked out, and that's flowing now. Which means that when you get confronted with, or you come across something that's new or different or marketing, or it doesn't make sense, and you go, does that connect with everything else? Does that make sense? Or maybe that makes sense for somebody else, but does that make sense for me? Does that make sense for how I want my family to live? And then you choose which way you want to go. And it's a choice. You're stepping into the daylight instead of drowning in sort of the darkness of all the different, you know, things of information, quote unquote, that are getting chucked at us, or, you know, whatever it is. I mean, for Pete's sake, there's so much stuff out there now. Let's not go down the rabbit hole of AI, because that's a whole other thing. But from the pure perspective of when you search on Google now, there is so much stuff out there from goodness knows who has written it, whether they're an expert or not, whether they have personal experience with it or not, that your search results now automatically come with a summary. I mean, if that isn't evidence that there's just too much, so do you know what? Don't bother. Like, just go outside, put your feet in the grass, ask yourself a question, and get quiet and listen. And then you've got way more options. Why choose any of the crummy options that are summarized for you on a Google search?
Well, I had a really interesting experience with Google the other day, actually. So I use a lot of homeopathy. I'm not fully trained, but I use it a lot with myself and my horses. And my horses have got particularly upset, and I'll often just like double check, like, well, I think this is the one I want to give them, but just make sure that like it's in the ballpark what I'm hoping it's going to do. And my phone battery had died, and I had to borrow my partner's phone, and he doesn't really search for homeopathy, because it's like I search for it and then I tell him what to take. And it was really interesting, because when I went on his phone trying to find it, it's like all of the resources that obviously like my phone comes up with, because I look at them quite frequently, they weren't there. So there was I just got like bombarded with all this like anti-homeopathy, like, which is kind of the mainstream of like, you know, it's not real, it's fake, and there's like no scientific evidence. And I had to like scroll down and down and down and down and down to actually find something. And I think that's the other thing is when you're like, you know, you're looking at these more sort of alternative things, if you haven't looked before, there's a good likelihood that, you know, the curated content that you might receive might be quite biased against it, because unfortunately the society that we live in and the way that it's structured around the pharmaceutical companies and things is quite anti it, unfortunately. And so just that's also another thing to bear in mind as well, isn't it, that you might draw up quite a lot of negativity around these things as well.
And I think that's a really good reason, and it's something I hear often from my students, why they wanted to go learn it with somebody who, you know, I'm qualified as a clinical medical herbalist, so I don't run a clinic now because I'm busy teaching full time. But, you know, with somebody credible and somebody they can connect with directly, because otherwise, even if you've got the best of intentions, you're interested in something, you want to do something naturally, you know, you've got a basic grasp of things, and maybe, you know, a bit, you know, a decent amount of experience in sort of doing it yourself. At the end of the day, if what you have to do every time you need to do something is Google it, all you're going to get back, like you said, is whatever that algorithm wants to chuck at you. Versus, you know, even if you've got, I'm looking at one of my many piles of books, the most recently stacked one, you know, or if you've got, even if you've got your reference books, which are brilliant for, you know, double checking, but you're in the moment, somebody's got a cold or whatever, or a rash, you know, I've been there, I've got a 4-year-old, rash, okay, let's just cross, but I've got the kind of really gruesome clinical cross-reference books, which I don't recommend to my students because they're a bit intense. Not for perusing while you're eating. Perhaps. Yeah, you got to work up to those ones. Also not to get yourself all freaked out about it, but you know, you're in the moment and then you reference and you cross-reference and, you know, who's saying what, and different people will say different things, as opposed to having the foundation so that you can access that knowledge and skills that you have within yourself, so that in the moment you can listen to yourself, you can figure out what to do, and you know exactly what you want to go cross-check if you need to do something. Just gonna check because this, you know, relative, you know, could really do a support with XYZ, but they happen to be taking this particular pharmaceutical. Just going to double check that this herb is suitable in this instance, yes or no? Okay. You know, and you've got a credible reference for that rather than Googling it. Because you'll come up with everything. I've done simultaneous search exercises with a friend of mine of about Epsom salts in the bath. For babies. We both got different results, and she was asking on behalf of a friend who had done Ask Dr. Google, and which came up with some article that said, oh, it's not safe to put Epsom salts in the bath with infants. And I'm like, where has that come from? And I looked at that article it was referencing, and it didn't explain why. It was a sound bite.
Oh, wow, okay.
So, as in, it was just like a little snippet saying, oh, it doesn't seem is not particularly safe. And this is on one of those websites that a lot of people tend to cross-check for, kind of various natural home health things or what have you, alongside a lot of other allopathic approaches. And I'm looking at this and I'm going, well, if you can't say why...
Yeah, how can you say it's definitely not?
Yeah. And then we both came up with about 5 other articles that all said it was fine. Yeah. So if you're not A, tuned into your intuition, and B, if you don't know yourself, if you've not learned... then, that's analysis paralysis right there. What are you supposed to do? Especially, when it comes to young children,
where you want to obviously
be really careful.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But somebody telling me that you can't put Epsom salts in a bath with children, whereas mine, since we started giving her baths I don't think we bathed her till maybe 6 months, till she had her first proper, she was actually fully covered in poo, and then she needed, then, yes, it is time for the bath.
Oh, the joys.
Yay! I've got photos, just in case I need them in the future. we've only ever bathed her in Epsom salts. No soap, no shampoos, no nothing. Yeah. She's got the best hair in the family, the best skin in the family. If only ever chucked Epsom salts in, she's going to soak up magnesium, which most people are deficient in anyway. Yeah. It's going to help keep her bowels regular, and it will put her to sleep. Yeah. It sounds like a triple win from a mum's perspective.
I think this is the thing though, isn't it? And it's at the core of like what you do, and at the core of my podcast as well, is about this idea of kind of re-empowering people and reminding them that like they have this wisdom and they have this ability, and we've been brainwashed by our society to hand our power away left, right and centre about everything. There's always someone who's more of an expert, or and particularly around our health. I think it's very much we are very disempowered around our health. We are the moment anything's wrong, we've got to go to the doctors, and then they've got to tell us, and I think a lot of women particularly have struggled because they have felt they've not been listened to. They've perhaps not got any diagnosis, or they've been misdiagnosed, or they've just kind of been told to go away and be quiet and deal with it. It can't be that big a deal. And I think that's what I'm seeing, is like there's more and more people are feeling dissatisfied with the treatment that they're getting, and that's why they're sort of going into these realms. And I think it starts with that, doesn't it? It starts with maybe you like connecting to yourself and your body, and like getting a bit more control about your health, and then it just ripples out into like, actually it becomes a lifestyle. It's not just literally herbalism. It isn't something that you just dip into when you've got a symptom, like, oh, someone in the family's got a cold or they've got this. It's like it just becomes an intrinsic way of like living your life. Is you're just the wisdom that you've gained from this journey just serves everything.
And I think it's almost like, when you're earlier on in the journey, there are probably some parallels to, the 5 stages of grief, where, you go through these stages where at first you're like, what, people usually have that aha moment of what is going on? Yeah. What is happening in this world around me? What is all this stuff that's going in and on my body? Then they start reading and researching, then they get really freaked out. Then they pull back from it because they're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do.
Too much to cope with, I can't.
Too much, I can't. And then gradually, step by step, I feel like the early stages are, okay, well, I'm going to swap mainstream, pharmaceutical stuff for herbal stuff. And that's what I tend to call the green pill approach. And they're like, okay, well, we'll swap this for that, oh, somebody's constipated, so instead of taking a laxative, they'll take a laxative herbal capsule instead, sort of thing. And then you keep taking another step and another step on that journey. And like we've been talking about, you gradually tune more into your intuition as you learn more about the plants and your body, and the way, and when I say body, I mean holistically, and the way everything interlinks and connects. You sink more into the seasons, you sink more into the cycles of life, and then you go, And the more you ask those questions, like I said earlier on, you ask a question, you get some answers back, you get a bit freaked out. You ask another question, you get a bit freaked out. You ask more questions, you start getting pissed off. Because, then there's the anger phase, like, well, what is this? But this is awful, grumble, grumble, right? And then you pass that phase and you go, do you know what? Actually, I've got the knowledge and skills. I'm tuned into my intuition. I can choose what kind of world I want to create for myself, what kind of world I want to live in. I don't have to choose any of that rubbish over there. Actually, it's there. Somebody else might choose it. Somebody else might be on the journey walking away from it. Cool. This is where I'm at now. This is the world I live in. The world I live in is not full of, like I said, all the, the doom, the gloom, the whatever. You choose what you want to what you want to be, and what you want to see, and what you want to feel. I've, as originally, as you can tell my accent, I've got an accent, originally from Florida. And I've spent quite a few years in the UK grumbling about how there's never any sun and it's all very grey. And to be fair...
Barely warranted this winter.
Well, you say that, but in creating this world for myself this year, like proactively, okay, here's what I want my world to look like. Last December, I gave the weather a memo. Yeah. I said, "Dear sun, please locate on a map where the UK is and show up because I'm expecting you all next year. Next year is going to be sunny." And you know what? I live in Yorkshire. It's not classically a super sunny place. And everybody I've spoken to has said, "Oh, it's been such a grey, miserable, crummy winter, da-da-da." Honest to goodness, since the 1st of January, I have seen so much sun. Not just because I'm amazing at manifesting, but because it's what I'm choosing to see.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, there's a day that's just grey all the time, and the sun doesn't want to get out of bed and whatever, like today. And I'm going, oh, it's a nice cozy tea drinking day, you know, as opposed to, oh, it's miserable. I mean, it doesn't mean I'm going to go outside in it necessarily, but, you know, I'm going to stay inside with my cozy tea. But creating those things that you choose to feel and see and how you want to do things. You know, the old expression like water off a duck's back, or the other, the one I was brought up with, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. But why? Because otherwise you're manifesting, you know, rubbish.
Yeah.
I've had a great winter. Yay, finally.
I think we all need more of what you're serving up there. Yeah. But I think that's the important thing as well, because it's like, it benefits us, but it also is for the benefit of people around us as well, because it's how we're showing up in the world as well. And it's like the energy that you're bringing into the world, you know, and it's like, you know, it's so important, I think, to, you know, it's not about, you know, unicorns and fairies and like, you know, painting a smile. You know, you've obviously, you know, things can go wrong and things like this, and you need to take action and do things, but just not carrying that burden of doom and gloom, I think, like all of the time. And I don't know, there is a sort of degree of like almost sort of pride. Maybe it's a British thing, like, you know, I'm carrying the weight of the world and like, look at me. And it's like, just put it down.
Yeah, put it down. Go frolic around in a field of flowers, you know, like a 5-year-old. Why not? Yeah. Who doesn't want to? Every time adults watch children just playing and being free and whatever, and they go, oh, if only I could be so free. And then we go on these meditation retreats to tap into our inner child and whatnot. Just friggin' put it down and go do it. You know, it's rainy out. You want to do the whole go dance in the rain. Don't put it as a thing on your wall. Go do it. You know, I don't choose to dance in the rain. I choose to dance in the sunshine because I'm from Florida. But, you know, when the sun's out, I'm like, yeah, it's sunny. Let's go. You know. But
it is, isn't it? The other day I was actually... I'd been feeding the birds in the garden. It was about 7 o'clock in the morning, and I've got a little dog, and she just wanted to play. And then I think my neighbours probably thought I was mad because I'm just like giggling, like me and my little dog are like racing around the garden and like pretending to pounce on each other, and we're just both like, you know, just. And it's like, it's that simple. Like, you can choose to do it. Like, you know, just because you're 40 doesn't mean you can't like run around and giggle like a child with your dog. But we stop ourselves. We're like, oh, that's not the proper behaviour for.
Well, it's, you know, they always say, and I used to be called this 4 going on 40. Oh, just, you know, what about 40 going on 4? Because I've started wondering as I approach 40, what happens when I turn 40? If I'm 4 going on 40, do I self-actualize? Do I reach the top of Maslow's, you know, pyramid? And like, then what? Then what do I do? You know, but. Imagine what the world would look and feel and act like if more people were going out feeding the birds at 7 in the morning and their dog decided they want to play, and you just decide to play and have a giggle fest. Yeah. You know, and it sounds a bit silly, but I mean, honestly, what if more people chose, do you know what? I'm going to have a look into that, and I'm going to see if actually that's what I want normal to be for me.
Yeah.
And then not, you know, with having to like, oh, that's so bad, that's so nasty, or, you know, and yeah, every once in a while, you know, we get on the patriarchy soapbox and all that whole thing. But, you know, not having to get on that soapbox all the time, which is hard for some of us, myself included sometimes. But, you know, just going, you know what? This is what I'm choosing for my life. Yeah. I'm going to do this. That stuff is not part of my world. You know, if my husband and I watch something on television, which is usually something quite nerdy, you know, and the adverts come on, we just put them on mute.
Yeah.
And even if we miss a mute and we start to hear one, if one of us starts getting a bit, because the design, start getting a bit ornery, and the other one says, it's not in our world, we'll get it on mute, we'll leave it. It's not, that does not, you know, that fairy washing up liquid does not exist in our world. It's not part of ours, so we just leave it. And then we just explain to our daughter, you know, different families do different things. Different families make different choices. This is what we do in our family.
Yeah, I love someone I speak to quite regularly talks about the of a radio and the idea that you can tune to different stations. Like all the stations are there. You know, you've got your classic FM and your sort of more pop and all your different, and your you know, talk radio and things like that. They're all there. They're all in the ether. But you get to choose. You've got control of the dial, and you get to choose what radio station are you going to be listening to. What are you going to resonate with and tune your frequency to? And I think that's really like sort of at the center of what we're saying here is like, you know, when you start on this journey of herbalism, it's like it might start about health, but it becomes like actually just how you're going to live your life and show up in the world for yourself, for your family, for your friends, for your community. And you mentioned like getting on your soapbox about patriarchy and things, but it's like actually by sort of working on how you show up in the world, you can actually start to change the world for other people. Yeah. And you're still, you know, but you can do it in a way that's empowering and positive and hopeful, rather than like, I'm just gonna, like you said about the weather. I mean, that's the perfect example. Instead of being like, I'm just gonna sit here and complain about something I'm not gonna change, it's like,
I'm gonna choose to see the sunshine.
Yeah.
And notice it when it's there, and then I'll notice more of it. I read a brilliant book, and she says, you combine with what you notice.
Yeah.
Which I think just apply. I mean, think about if you notice the hedgerows, the forests, the meadows, the seaside, you combine with that. Then there's that connection is reestablished from our direction, because from the other direction it's never stopped. Yeah. It's reestablished from our direction. You're reconnected. And different people, when they, you know, explore herbal medicine, different people go on different journeys with it. Some go on journeys where they totally transform their health. Some go on journeys where they want the ripples to go out wider in their community, starting with themselves. Some people, it really sparks their drive to maybe change the way they garden, to do things in a biodynamic way, or, you know, regenerative farming, all kinds of different aspects. Some people hook more into the plants, more into the people, more into the communities. Every single one of those scenarios is a ripple.
Yeah.
And every time I teach, I am in awe. I just sit there watching the ripples.
Yeah.
And I think, God, I'm so lucky to do it. Yeah. Wow. I mean, you know, and sometimes I do, I mean, it's probably going to sound a bit cheesy, but sometimes it does really make me quite emotional when I'm teaching, and I just watch the light bulbs turning on, the dots connecting, the people connecting with each other. We just had a student and alumni gathering in the year, so it's a kind of, before the teaching year starts. So students from different cohorts and different years all got to meet for the first time.
Oh, wow.
And it was just, I had all kinds of like fun things planned. I really did. We did them, but I was almost interrupting everybody's conversation, Yeah. And you could just see the connections were being made. There was a real community. How many times do we talk about like, join our community? And it's some kind of like online subscription membership-y thing. And you can get, certain levels of connection and support out of that, of course. But nothing beats, especially being in a yurt. Everybody loves the yurt. Nothing beats getting in a yurt with a bunch of like-minded people and just chatting. One of our really lovely students had a baby during last year, not in the yurt physically. But she had a baby. So since then, she's been bringing the baby to the in-person sessions. Oh. She brought the baby to the gathering. The baby suddenly had like 15 brand new aunties.
Oh,
and was just like, but that's how it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's this little set of cheeks just being passed around and getting loved. By the end of the day, he was like, I am the most special person on the planet. He was really chubby and sweet. But that's how it should be. Yeah. There are lots of hands, there are lots of hearts, and everybody is holding each other. Yeah? Rather than just off doing something on your own. And sometimes you need to go your own way. But when you go your own way, as you're going along, look out for the people who are going in that same direction. Because just because you're choosing something different from everything else doesn't mean you got to be by yourself. That's miserable.
It is miserable, and it makes it so much harder as well. I think in our first conversation we talked about that a little bit as well, of like, quite often sometimes you're sort of the black sheep of your family or your friend circle, and you have to justify why you're making the choices that you're making, and it can make it quite difficult when you're just starting out on this journey. So actually having that support is really important. But I love it. You mentioned gardening, and I just have to. That's a big thing for me. I've got in my podcast, I talk a lot about gardening, and I think that's the thing is like with herbalism, you're just developing your relationship with the plants, and what's quite we've obviously got this biodiversity crisis, and that goes back to what you were saying about when are the old ways, and we've got this the idea of this shifting baseline of what's normal for us wasn't normal for our parents or our grandparents, and like cultivating a garden is a great gift to nature as well. And if it can be of your healing plants that are of benefit to your family, those plants can be of benefit to the insects, the pollinators, the birds, and you just enter into this beautiful like web of relationship where you're not taking from the world as well. Like that's a change as well, because a lot of our society is about exploitation and what we can get, and suddenly you're changing that conversation and you're entering into this relationship of mutual reciprocity. You're giving and receiving.
We're not using herbs, we're working with them. Yeah. Which can sometimes sound like a bit of a tedious vocabulary exercise, but the more you practice that shift in what you say, the more you feel that shift in your perspective, in how you approach the plants. If you're using them, then you just go out, you take whatever you want because it's for you, and nature is there to pillage and what have you, and it's always going to replenish itself no matter what, and it's for you, rather than if you're working with the plants, you're tuning into which plant is most supportive in this scenario. Yeah, some people before they harvest like to ask the plant, is it okay?
Yeah.
Some people don't. Some people find that a bit too woo for them. It's all good. Do your own way of doing it. But in either case, approaching that plant, whether it's one you've grown, just because you've grown it doesn't mean you necessarily have, an intrinsic right to it, or one that you're foraging responsibly, and you approach it with more respect, more, like you said, that sense of reciprocity, more, this is another living thing.
Yeah.
Can we work together? Are you happy with that? Yes or no? Or bare minimum, I'm going to gather what I need to support myself or my family, and then we in turn have more vitality, stronger health, so we have more energy to then support back in our gardening practices or, keeping of the land or whatever it is, as opposed to just take.
Yeah.
You take from the land, you take a pill.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you work with the plants and you create a remedy that's supporting someone to come back into balance rather than fixing or suppressing or silencing their symptoms.
Yeah, I love that. I was just like, as you were talking, I was just thinking, this is the whole approach to like life and even like nature conservation, because I often mention like this idea of co-creation, but just, yeah, as you were talking, I was like, that's it, isn't it? It's just, you're working with other energies, with other entities, with other beings. Yes, they might not be able to talk back to you directly, but
depending on who you are.
Yeah. But it's just a completely different way of showing up in the world than we are taught through our society and culture that we currently have. And it's just a nicer way of turning up. Like, if you can be like that with, the plants and the animals and things, you can be like that more with people as well. You develop these traits of like empathy and compassion and just understanding and meeting people where they are, which, can't help but make the world a bit better than it is.
For example, food and what we eat and people's food philosophies have become, it's almost like discussing politics at the dinner table.
Yeah.
It's so contentious. It really hits nerves with people. And, back in the day, the proverbial day, there was no such thing as a food philosophy. It was you grew what you could grow based on where you lived.
Yeah.
You worked your butt off to harvest it and preserve it, and then you ate it, because if you didn't, you were hungry. So there wasn't this kind of, food. And that's, when we talk about, quote unquote, the old ways, because the ways of preparing, combining foods, storing them, these kinds of things, even if it wasn't said, we do this because, that habit, that norm was life supporting, was nourishing, had helped people be healthier, to survive longer, these sorts of things. But back to what you were just saying, I think with food, different food philosophies and these kinds of things, actually, if you change your mindset from, well, this person eats that and I really disapprove of that, or that's so unethical, or, oh, I can't believe they give their kids this, or I would never eat that, whatever it is, yeah. Change the perspective to, that person has actually put a lot of thought into it. They've done a lot of research, and there's a unfortunately, because so much stuff is greenwashed, it can be challenging to decipher between seeing and reading and hearing about something and going, oh, okay, yeah, I think that's what I should be doing. That's the right thing to do, when actually the stuff is coming from a marketing perspective. Yeah. But everybody's got to, go on their own journey with that. But even if somebody has a completely different food philosophy to you, have they put in the time, the effort, the concern to do, because it's important to them to do some reading, do some research? They might have come up, come to very different conclusions to you. But the premise, the starting point, the important bit is the same. They care. It matters to them what they're nourishing themselves with. It matters to them what the relationship, what role their food and the production of their food plays in all the various ecosystems. Their health matters to them. Okay, so you've got something in common, even if one person is a nose-to-tail meat eater and the other person is a vegan.
Yeah.
You don't have to sit at the table being like, oh, I would never eat that. Da, da, da.
Yeah.
But if you've both really thought, fine, you've drawn different conclusions. Great. The world is diverse. There are more things on the table to choose from, more options than people had in the old days, perhaps. But I think it's just that, like we've been talking about, that mindset shift. And one of the things that helps that really land in your body, become embodied, isn't it? Let's use another current phrase of the day, for you to really embody that. But seriously, for that to really sink in, if we use 90s wording, for that to sink in, you've got to have those webs of connection created for yourself. Otherwise, it's just a bumper sticker.
Yeah.
And a bumper sticker doesn't change your world.
Well, I think, and you mentioned it about your own students. It's like, yes, you're drawn together by this common ground of herbalism, but the way that they go out and experience that, they all have their unique take on it. And that enriches all of your lives by having this diversity of like, well, I can go and do that, and yes, that might not be for you, or you might go, oh, I've never thought I could do that. Oh, that sounds really great. Oh, I'm so glad that I've had that experience of meeting you, and your intuition and wisdom, and it's just I think it's about embracing our differences and diversity and realizing they can enrich our lives more than being oh my god, you're different and you've got a different opinion, and therefore you're right and I'm wrong, or I need to be right so that you're wrong. And it's just, it needs to be more grey than that, doesn't it? Really, it's just this rich tapestry of life needs all of these colourful threads in it, and otherwise it is this doom and gloom that we're trying to avoid,
as opposed to lots of fun and interesting. I mean, how interesting to meet different people with different perspectives, and exercise your brain to find those common grounds. And sometimes you might find actually there really isn't a lot of common ground. Okay, so I can be polite. People come into your life for a reason and a season, that whole thing. So what can you learn from this interaction? Or how might, say you have a conversation, you haven't found common ground, but what questions has that brought up for you that may be something you want to go have a think about? Is there an opportunity to shift or tweak something else for you? Not that we have to be constantly changing stuff, but, being curious about life again.
Yeah. I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's just we mentioned questioning and curiosity, and just, I don't know, let's all like, start being alive. Really, like where, it's almost spring, the sap is rising if we're a tree.
Yeah.
We've been snoozing all of this time in this world that's kind of, being created for us. And it's like, actually, let's become the architects of our own world again and just like step up. And I think what hopefully people have been inspired by listening to you again. Hopefully, if you didn't hear our first episode, you go back and have another listen. But there are, whilst you don't actually do consultations for health anymore, if someone feels interested in that, you're welcome to reach out to Meghan, and we'll have all of her details in the show notes and description for you, so you can get in contact for her. But if you have been inspired by this conversation to like actually step into the journey of herbalism and having it become part of how you show up in the world, do you want to share, Meghan, a bit about your courses that people can join you on in your physical space, in your beautiful yurt, in your lovely organic garden? Just so that, because I think you've got a couple of courses year one starting this year that you might have a few spaces on, so if people are ready and desperate to dive in, they can get started straight away. Otherwise, there will be more opportunities in the future.
Yes, yeah. So I think this will air in February 2025. That is the year, right? Yes, 2025. So we've got a couple of places left for the cohorts. The first year cohorts beginning this spring. So depending on the group, that's March or April 2025. So you can pop to the links in the show notes to learn all about that and enroll if you would like to join us on the journey to blow your mind. No, but seriously, when we sit in the closing ceremony, we pass the talking stick bundle of rosemary around, and my students go, "This course has changed my life."
Yeah.
Because they're asking all these questions. So if you want a life-changing experience, you can tell there's a lot of humor involved in everything we do. But the course is, it's a year course. So we go through 4 seasons. We start in March, April, and we end in December. And we've got up to 3 years of development. And each year we go deeper. So the first year we really set the foundations of connecting with ourselves and with the plants. The second year, we then sort of fold that into the turning of the seasons. We go through the wheel of the year, not from a particular, religious persuasion or anything like that, but from the sense of looking at the 8 seasons as we experience them in the UK, and we weave that in with our Ayurvedic concepts. So we get those kind of relevant to our climate, because it doesn't get as hot here as it does in India. No manifesting is going to change that. And then the third year, we walk the spiral of life. So we go through each of the 6 stages of life. So each time we go through the year, we go deeper and deeper. We learn another set of herbs, building our relationships with them and with ourselves, with our bodies. So the course is a combination of in-person gatherings in our yurt in East Yorkshire in the UK, and then we do live online Zoom sessions in between, and everything's always recorded because, life happens and not everybody I think I'm the only one with 100% attendance rate. Some people are very close, so
it's reassuring that you've got 100% attendance.
Yes, yeah. Sometimes my little one joins in if she's home from school, but she's poorly or something, his kids pick stuff up, but anyway, so we've got cohorts beginning this spring, and cohorts beginning every spring. So if you're listening to this in the future, you can use the links in the show notes to learn more and enroll on a future cohort. And we've got our mailing list as well for anybody who maybe isn't quite ready to jump straight into the journey, but wants to get a bit more of a feel over time for how the courses run, the insights that students come up with as they go. And we just, it's a real community, like an actual real physical one with people in it that will hug you. and give you baby
and I'm
plants.
guaranteed every time I've spoken to Meghan, she just makes me smile, and I feel like my cheeks always hurt. So I guarantee that, like, you know, if you enroll on her course, like, she's gonna bring this beautiful energy of positivity and hope and inspiration into your life. And yeah, I think we sort of see like these things of like it's life changing, and sometimes there is a bit of a buzzword, but I really do think like stepping into these spaces and these communities where you're encouraged to connect with your intuition, where you are encouraged to take autonomy for your body, for your health, for your life, you know, it is life changing. It's you know, they can be simple steps and simple changes, but actually it can just change how you are able to experience life and show up in this world. And I think it's so important to like put these resources in front of people and let them know that they are available, whether that's, you know, they choose to do something with you, Meghan, or whether they, you know, feel like actually I want to find something that resonates with me and step into that. But yeah, just to feel inspired to go and look for the thing that's going to light your fire from within.
And then, like you said, you become the architect of your own life, because nature abhors a vacuum. We all know. You do a bunch of clearing of a space, the nettles will move in. Nature abhors a vacuum. So if you are not the architect of your life, someone else or something else will step in and become the architect for you. And wouldn't you rather choose and do it yourself?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, for me, I'm like, you know, I want to see this vision of a future where we have this beautiful relationship with the natural world, where we're much more in balance with it. And, you know, we have these communities where we care for each other. You know, they're built on this like core foundation of love and consideration and care, because it's not just about the natural world, it's about the people living in the natural world as well. And because we're all part of nature, and that starts with us. It starts with us showing up in our own lives and making the changes in our own life, and then that begins to ripple out, and that's how we're gonna, you know, create the change which I think so many people are craving. I think, you know, we're seeing that in politics, and we're seeing that in, you know, every facet of our world at the moment. Is like people are craving change and they don't know where to look for it, and it's like, actually we need to just look closer
within
to home.
yourself.
Yeah, it's a cliche, isn't it? And it's difficult. It's not easy. Like, it's not going to be a simple journey. It takes a lot of courage and strength to, you know, start unpicking some of that stuff. But yeah, if you do it with the right people around you, it is possible. And, you know, hopefully you'd sit there, you know, you'll sit there in a year's time and you'll be like, wow, like, look how my life has transformed.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's been fantastic again speaking to you, Meghan. I'm
Likewise.
sure. Hopefully, I know we've got loads more that we could talk about, so hopefully we'll, you know, again connect again in the future.
Yeah.
But yeah, for everyone listening, please do go and have a look at Meghan's links. She's got great presence on social media, and she's got a lovely newsletter as well. She won't inundate you, but she does send lovely updates. So yeah, sign up for that if you're interested to know more as well.
Yes, it would be wonderful to welcome anybody who's feeling like they resonate, or that they're being called, or just, hey, that sounds fun. Yeah, I'm up for that. Come join us. We'll have fun.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thanks, Meghan.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Nurtured by Nature podcast. I truly hope this conversation has brought some hope and inspiration into your life. I would love to have these messages ripple out across the world. So if you can, please share this episode with your friends, leave a review on your favourite podcast player, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. I would love to hear from you, so please feel free to connect with me on the links provided in the podcast description. But most importantly, thank you so much for being a part of this journey with me. But don't forget to simply get out there and enjoy the natural world.